You're listening to a 630 WPRO.com podcast brought to you by Atlantic Paper. Call 800-613-0950 or visit AtlanticPaper.com to find out how the Atlantic Advantage can make your life easier.
And on the Newsmaker line is Republican congressional candidate, former Superintendent of the State Police, Brendan Doherty. Brendan, good afternoon.
Hi, Dan. How you doing?
Very well, thanks. First, before we get into yesterday's stuff, what is your take on the Libyan crisis, so to speak, right now?
You know, obviously, an assault on American values. It's a terrible attack on our embassy, and I feel my heart goes out to the people who lost their lives there, and especially our ambassador. It shouldn't happen. We need to be strong about it, but we need to investigate it and make sure that that's not just an isolated violent mob before we jump to conclusions as to how we categorize that as an act of terrorism. And you know, let me just say this: the host country is responsible for the security. So we need to hold Libya accountable for that, and I'm sure that I'm glad to hear the Marines are there. The Marine team is there, and the FBI evidence recovery team, who I've worked with in the past, and will do a great job in investigating and come to will be the finder of facts.
Tell me what you're thinking about this discussion going on between Mitt Romney and the White House and the Obama campaign about the original statements from the embassy in Cairo and how they fell short in Mitt Romney's eyes. Do you agree with his criticism?
Well, I think this is a time, America needs to be strong and the administration needs to be strong, but we also need to bond together as a country when we have an incident like this, especially an international incident. So, we need to work together. I didn't have an opportunity to listen to the exact dialogue between the president and Governor Romney, but I think we need to focus on the safety of the people the American citizens who are now in Libya. It's a very trying time there for American citizens who are there in that country.
Here's the statement that the embassy put out as while this was an ongoing incident in Benghazi. The embassy of the U.S. in Cairo condemns the continuing efforts by misguided individuals to hurt the religious freedoms of Muslims, as we condemn efforts to offend believers of all religions. Today, the 11th anniversary of September 11th, terrorist attacks in the U.S., Americans are honoring our patriots and those who serve our nation as the fitting response to the enemies of democracy. Respect for religious beliefs is a cornerstone of American democracy. We firmly reject the actions by those who abuse the universal right of free speech to hurt the religious beliefs of others. That's what Mitt Romney came down on. Now, look, you're going to be tied to Mitt Romney in all ways to Sunday. Some of it will be, on par. Some of it won't be on target.
Right. Well, in reference to that statement, this is, of course, we all respect religious values and others' religions, but this is a time to focus on the violence that was perpetrated toward America at that embassy. So that's not what I would be saying. I would be looking at walking tall and carrying a big stick as to why that happened, and did we get the proper support and protection from Libya?
Okay, the statement that Romney had such a problem with was something that was being offered, at the current time, not knowing exactly whether the ambassador's life had been taken, all that kind of stuff. Do you see the delicate balance that goes on when you've got folks who you can't identify, don't have any idea who they are, who are claiming, at least perhaps in fake left go right fashion, that they're upset about this parody innocence of Muslims, and the American free speech environment that creates these kinds of opportunities? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out exactly why it is that Mitt Romney got into this whole thing, and because you're running for Congress in a federal office, and because you're the Republican nominee, it seems to me that it's appropriate to ask, where you stand on that. And so if I'm clear, Mitt Romney was correct in suggesting that the administration had missed the boat.
Well, I don't think this is the time to be talking about just protecting others' values and religious values. We need to focus on what happened, how it happened, who was involved, who was behind it. Mm-hmm. So I think the investigation is paramount to any other conversations right now.
Okay, so yesterday you launched the campaign in grand fashion with a press conference in a pretty setting. Tell me, where is your priority going to be in your rhetoric? Is it going to be about where David Cicilline and his behavior has been, and his practice of deception in your mind, which frankly I can't argue with, or is it going to be primarily an establishment of who you are and what their toolbox seems to be, which is simply to tie you to a decline in benefits on Social Security and Medicare?
Right, and I agree with some of your points on this in the last couple of days. The reason I held that press conference is because I see this as a continuous pattern of deception, and people who know David Cicilline know that he is the master of deception. And I talked about some of the issues of the city of Providence in 2010. And I'll keep going back to 2010. But the reason I brought it up as a continuous pattern of deception is because now he's perpetrating these on me. Because I've been traveling to the senior high-rises for 4 or 5 months at least, and talking to the seniors about Medicare and Social Security, and I talk about the fact that my mom is 85 years old and she's not well, and I go to visit her almost every day and sit with her friends, and I understand their fears and their issues, and at a time when I would not vote for any plan that privatizes Medicare in any way or alters the current structure. But David Cicilline has been talking about this radical Republican agenda, and really the radical agenda is David Cicilline's progressive movement. And he voted for the progressive budget, and 108 of 155 Democrats rejected that budget. So yeah, he is pretty good with his messaging, and what he's doing now is being deceptive about my positions on some of these things, and the radical Republican agenda that would threaten Social Security. I've been quite clear with the seniors that I would not vote to change the current plan, and the beneficiaries, the people who are collecting Social Security now, are safe. They shouldn't even have to worry about this political rhetoric, and the people about to go on should be safe. I talk a lot about the Simpson-Bowles plan. I married the Simpson-Bowles plan. And, look, we fixed Social Security, or strengthened Social Security in 1983 with a Republican president, Ronald Reagan, and a Democratic Speaker of the House, and Tip O'Neill. They strengthened Social Security in 1983 to bring it to where it is today. And in Simpson-Bowles, they talk about, Alan Simpson talks about raising the wage cap. I believe it's 108,600 is the cap. So raising the wage cap and looking down at the road at someone born around 1960, it may change the benefit age by a couple of months. But for Congressman Cicilline to go around just throwing a blanket statement out there that Brendan Doherty wants to change Social Security, that scares people. Those are the scare tactics. So if Congressman Cicilline is fighting for seniors like he says he is, he shouldn't be scaring them.
All right, hold on. If we can indulge the congressman candidate for one more segment, I'm up against headlines here. I want to ask about then the strategy of communicating that when we come back and get your response. Brendan Doherty on the line with us on the Dan Yorke Show. Lots to come. Want to talk about what's happening in Libya, and Hummel's got a hell of a story about firefighter schedules at 2:00 that has all North Kingstown buzzing. Stay with us. Back to Brendan on the Newsmaker line. Brendan, you've got a very, very polished ad that it's entitled "Are You Kidding Me?" which I think is terrific. But the timing of it is interesting to me because you still haven't in major media. You might be talking to little biddies in the senior houses, but you're not, and I say that respectfully, but it doesn't seem like you're in major media smacking him down on what is his only playbook tool. And even at your press conference yesterday, it was part of the mosaic, but not the essential message. And I'm wondering when you're gonna define yourself by saying you're not going to do the things that he keeps alleging you're going to do in paid media, and start defining yourself on a clear, concise, bullet point, PowerPoint presentation.
Dan, first of all, thanks for kicking me on, because I do have some other points to make. We'll see. I have been, like I said, talking about this for the last few months, but I'm the underdog here. I'm running against the establishment, and David Cicilline is good at messaging. We all know that. So now I had to counter that, which I did yesterday, because it was irritating for me to go back to senior high-rises, and we see these flyers from David Cicilline totally distorting my position on Medicare and Social Security, and which are the Simpson-Bowles Commission, which addresses tax reform, discretionary spending, Medicare and Social Security. And by the way, that's the first time I've heard that commercial, so we will have to address that. It's disingenuous once again. So I will continue to get my message out, but your points from yesterday were well taken. I can't just stand...
well, most of my points was you ought to fire half your staff for not being able to advise you what the hell you ought to be doing right away. I mean, I'm not going to run away from what I said yesterday. By the way, I don't feel good, offering that kind of aggressive criticism, especially, to people who I've, known professionally and like, but God Almighty, you ought to sue him for malpractice for not convincing you that you ought to be doing one thing, and that is saying, I won't do that, and this is what I stand for. And that press conference didn't accomplish it yesterday, and neither has your ad campaign so far.
Well, we'll continue to get the message out. I hear you, and we have been strategizing as early as this morning as to how to counter some of David's exception. But I realized, like you mentioned yesterday, I can't stand on Medicom Avenue in Bristol and say, here I am, I'm Brendan Doherty, you can trust me, even though everyone knows they can trust me. This race goes beyond that. I have to continue to talk about my issues that are being distorted. So it is a challenge, but I believe that the people in the 1st District trust me, and they know that I will I will support our seniors in their in Social Security, Medicare.
Well, I think the trust thing is a very, very interesting concept, because there's no question that your track record of public service is impeccable. David Cicilline has been deafed by, on opening night, saying he's a good man, but he's tied to the wrong guys. And the issue of trust is not whether you won't shoplift, or not whether you won't commit a crime, or not whether you're, mixed in with conspiracy and corruption or any of that kind of stuff, or not whether you take a campaign check and put it in your pocket or anything along that line. People, there's a difference between trust as a person who comports himself in an exemplary fashion like you do, and trust on where you're going to vote. And while I trust what you say, and people who follow you trust what you say, and those who you look in the eye might believe what you say, your marketing effort here and your campaign effort has been fledgling at best in terms of getting that message out. And I was just wondering, what were you guys doing, on election night when you see Anthony Gemma get his tail beat in by 2-1, all on David's behavior? Did dawn on anybody say, you know what? We might just be doing a Gemma Light post-game show here that is ineffective.
Oh, no, I hear what you're saying, and Anthony came at this from a different perspective, and that was the issues that he filed a complaint with, according to him, with the FBI and the state police. I'm coming at it from a different perspective. What he did in the city of Providence, how he left the city of Providence in financial doldrums. Really, in a perfect world, if everyone knew exactly what David Cicilline did to the city of Providence, he wouldn't even be in this race. So, to your point, when are we going to improve that messaging? We are improving that now, and we'll continue to. I had to have that press conference yesterday to just bring this out of the shadows. That David Cicilline, because this wasn't known until I made it public yesterday.
What wasn't known?
That David is deceiving seniors on my position on Medicare and Social Security. So, but we will. Pardon me.
Yeah, but Brendan, you spent most of your time talking about his Providence behavior. But, see, this is the thing. It seems to me that you're. Let me just say this. It seems to me that you're running the risk of doing what Anthony Gemma did in a lighter fashion. I know that you didn't mention voter fraud. You're not on the voter fraud thing, and so that's why I call it Gemma Light. But what you've done here is highlight kind of a top 10 list as to why you shouldn't trust David Cicilline, including mostly what he did as a mayor of Providence, all of which, by the way, is accurate. But it seems to me that unless you're going to go nuclear with him and call for some kind of criminal investigation or criminal outcome for his public behavior, that you're going to end up half pregnant in this whole thing, just like Anthony Gemma was, and that will distract from. Well, I know that. This is why I don't know why you've waded into that pool as a priority. It's not. I'm not suggesting it's not supplemental in this campaign or debate material or any of those things. But there's two things that seem to me you got to be doing. Say, I won't do that on Social Security and Medicare. And the other is, this is what I'll do. That's all you got to do because you got the trust of the entire electorate.
Thank you. But then let me just say, and I appreciate your comments on this, and I agree with you, but I have been doing that for the last 5 months. Then it just started to get distorted
on the ground.
But I know, but let me finish. So
sure.
we needed to bring it out, address it, and the reason that I did talk about the top 10 issues of deceit is because it's a continuous pattern of deception where he's twisting now what I'm saying, and now the only other avenue to take is we have the press conference. Radio, television.
I got to tell you something. There's something really screwy about the Rhode Island voter. I think you've watched this as a law enforcement officer for years and years, and I'm sure you're shaking your head. It seems to me the Rhode Island voter thinks a whole lot less about the character of the person running than the gimme and what do I got. And I think you might be in you might be. I think the strategy right now is not fine-tuned. By the way, tell me about polls, because I know that your campaign has been riding on previous polls that had you double digits up going into this election season. Now we've got Democratic pollsters saying this thing is a dead heat or leaning toward Cicilline already. What is your gut check on what the data is saying right now?
Yeah, I would reject the Democratic National Congressional Committee's position on that. They have to say that. But
so are you suggesting they're fudging the numbers?
Well, it depends on how you ask the questions, and it depends on whether it's a push poll or not, whether the pollster's trying to talk someone out of which way they would go. But yes, we're not relying on polls because we all know what happens with polls. Look at David Cicilline was up by 4 points to Anthony Gemmer, and certainly beat him by more than four points. But the last public poll was. Well, it's interesting. Channel 12 had one, I think it was in May, where we were up by 15 points. Then we had an internal poll where we were up by 14 points to David Cicilline. And then the most recent one that Channel 12 did was when they asked the question, if your guy loses to David Cicilline, when they asked the Gemma people, where would you vote? And I believe 52% of the Gemma people would come over to our side. So that's the last poll I've heard. Yeah. We will conduct an internal poll very soon, but I'm really, I'm not focusing on polls. I'm just focusing on getting the message out, and I hear what you're saying. This is a tough race. I'm the underdog here, and I'm working with a messaging company out of D.C., and we're talking daily, and they look at the issues, and the issue now is the deception about my position on Social Security and Medicare.
Only. My recommendation is hone it down and just say, look, he says I'll do this. I won't do that. I wouldn't even be messing around with the word deception. Just say it's not true.
Right. Well,
but anyway, you know what? I'm not in your circle. Folks, I'll be clear with you. I have an affinity for Brendan. I've talked about this, off the air with him on a number of occasions. I consider him a friend. I couldn't be more frustrated with the way this campaign is running right now. I think it's deserving you, and I think if you don't right the ship, you could lose. And you can call yourself an underdog, but you're the most powerful underdog we've seen in politics around here in a long time. It would be a real tragedy, I think, to the constituents of the 1st District to have you mis-execute a campaign that has been so well organized and funded on the ground, and boot it by not explaining to everybody the simple things that you won't stand for and what you do stand for. I don't know. That's just me. Sorry.
All right. Well, Dan, I appreciate having me on. The strategy is very similar to what we've been talking about. So you and I have been talking about in this conversation. So I think that we've raised a considerable amount of money in the television ads and that'll be reflected in the television ads and the radio ads coming.